conductive wire, and you were so electric. I had no say when you came so near and just passed right through me.
Hey everyone, welcome to Geekdom is Back. I'm your host, Deanna Chapman, and today I am joined by Shane Conard, and we are talking about the 6-episode Disney Plus series Moon Knight today. We are going to figure out if we know what happened, aren't we, Shane?
Yeah, I know what happened. I'm very confident.
Okay, I'm not. Because I knew I was going to do a podcast episode on this show, and I still did not take notes every episode. So this should be fun. It's fun. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm a little sleepy.
We'll talk about Oscar Isaac and wake you up.
Yeah, that's what most people do, to wake me up.
Obviously, as I just mentioned, Oscar Isaac playing the lead in this. He is Mark Spector / Moon Knight / Stephen Grant / a couple other names we'll mention a little later on, but spoiler warning for anyone who hasn't finished the show. We are definitely going to spoil the end of it. But you also have May Calamawy. I'm probably butchering that last name, but that's what it looks like, as Layla. You have F. Murray Abraham, I believe, as the voice of Khonshu, and then Kareem El Hakim as, the sort of embodiment of Khonshu. So he's the one in the suit. Ethan Hawke as Arthur Harrow. And then you have some other people showing up here and there. Gaspard Ulliel, I'm probably not getting that right either, as Anton, who we see for pretty much one episode, and then he's done, unfortunately, passed away before that episode aired, too, in a terrible accident. So that was kind of wild to hear about in the midst of all this. But I think really the focus is on Mark, Layla, Arthur Harrow. Those are sort of the big three. Then you have lots of mythology coming into it, Egyptian gods, and a bunch of stuff that probably went way over my head because I'm so bad at familiarizing myself with all of the sort of ancient mythology that comes in the Marvel universe a lot of times. How do you feel about that stuff, Shane?
This one was especially hard. I did my best. Truthfully, most of it was new for me, and it was a lot of fun Google searches. trying to do my best.
Yeah, I felt that way once they started doing like the Thor movies, because I was like, okay, Norse mythology I'm a little more familiar with, but not super familiar with. Most of what I know about this stuff comes from Marvel and DC. So I never bothered to really dive into it from like a actual history perspective. So usually I'm just like Googling like you are. I'm like, what are these people the gods of? They're not even people because they're gods, but case in point.
What are these people the gods of? No, I agree. And also, Norse mythology, a lot easier. I think just easier in general for me to follow too.
Thor, God of Thunder, that's all you need to know. That's not all you need to know, but
super easy.
Close enough. So I feel like the first episode, we spend a lot of time at the British Museum.
Yeah, we just get a lot of fun Oscar Isaac and his silly, his pretty silly little accent. And I feel like my feelings after episode 1 were kind of just the fact that it doesn't really feel like we deserved Oscar Isaac for the MCU, especially on a little runoff 6-episode series. Yeah, pretty sold on it right away.
Yeah, and the thing that this show had to do that the others didn't is introduce a whole new character without having any other ties to the MCU. Like WandaVision, we already knew a lot about those characters, even though we still had some characters playing bigger roles like Monica Rambeau. But then with Falcon and Winter Soldier, obviously characters we're very, very familiar with for those two shows. Loki, again, super familiar.
Been around for a minute.
Hawkeye does bring in Kate Bishop, but we have Clint as sort of the anchor to the rest of the MCU, whereas this one felt like it was just all new.
Yeah, and along with that too, there's not a whole lot of intersecting, interweaving with other storylines going on. You don't get any cameos like that of, people we've seen before. But I do actually think that that's kind of part of its strength I think a lot of the other shows and movies rely on Easter eggs or cameos, just to stoke the fire of I don't know, give the people what they want to see.
Yeah, this is the first one that felt like its own standalone thing that wasn't tied to the greater MCU. So I thought that was interesting right off the bat because I was a little worried. I was like, how are they going to tie this in? Are they going to tie this in? And obviously, Marvel is known for tying everything together.
Yeah.
They are very much the big picture company doing this right now. DC tried and it didn't go so well, but we don't need to talk about that. But this first episode really just kind of drops you into Steven's life, but you see him struggling, you see him waking up, and he sees the cult meeting being led by Arthur. And I'm willing to forgive the accent because he has so many identities. I imagine it's not easy to keep all of those things straight.
Oh yeah, for sure. And if anything, I mean, you do kind of find out that it's in its own way. It's not even a genuine accent. It's something.
Later Skaters is my favorite thing though.
Oh yeah, it's great. Yeah, they give him his little non-superhero quip. It's a home run.
Yeah, it's on par with Sweet Christmas.
But is episode 1 also where we get the first little hint of Steven seeing things in the museum and his first little Moon Knight encounter? Is that not till episode 2? Am I jumping the gun here?
He sees the jackal at the very end of episode 1, and then that kind of rolls us into episode 2. They do a good job of picking up where episode 1 pretty much left off, and he's trying to convince the security guy that someone else was in there, and it's just him looking like a fool on the security cameras. And obviously, because of this supernatural element, it's probably not going to get picked up on the cameras, the jackal or Moon Knight. And just seeing Steven go through all of this, and he's just so baffled by it. It was pretty entertaining, but at the same time, you feel bad for him.
You do. And they do a really good job of, I think that's the reason you have to get Steven first, is you do have to sympathize with the character before it becomes a whole other thing.
Yeah, a couple of the other identities, not so sympathetic, but you have all of these moments where he starts seeing Mark in mirrors and glass, basically anything he can see his own reflection in, and episode 2 introduces all of that, and we're starting to really get into all of the Amit lore, I guess you could say, that whole storyline too. And I think they kept it small enough to where, even though there are obviously a bunch of Egyptian gods in this, they really only focus on a few the entire time.
3-ish.
Once you get the hippo, then you're like, okay, here we go.
Yep.
But we'll get to that. So you have Khonshu and Amit basically going head to head, but through other means. And you don't see that payoff until, that final episode. But what did you think of how they used the avatars until the end of this? You
definitely get far more of actual Khonshu throughout the show than you do. I mean, Amit, you don't get to the very, very end, which I think is good. I think that...
Well, because she's trapped.
Exactly, yeah. But throwing too much at us at once would have been, I think, even as even for the MCU would have been, because it's now a different playing field.
Yeah.
I think it would have just been, I don't know, it's nicer to ease into things. We've been eased into things the entire 40 movie plus whatever journey of the MCU,
so many movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. They are sort of just giving you bits and pieces. But I think the problem with this only being 6 episodes is that because we didn't have like a soft introduction of Moon Knight in a previous movie or TV show, it's a little harder. Like I was saying earlier with Hawkeye, you have Clint in the story introducing Kate Bishop to the MCU. So that kind of works as her introduction because we don't need to know as much backstory about her, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree.
And we still get a lot of it So because Moon Knight / Steven / Mark Spector is much more complicated than Kate Bishop, Kate Bishop is a teenager with a mom she doesn't necessarily get along with all the time. Like, that's nothing new. This is all new for the MCU pretty much. And I think the way they handle slowly rolling out the different identities works well. But then we hit episode 5 and they give us so much information. And I know we're skipping 3 and 4 a little here, but you have this cat and mouse game between Steven and Arthur, and then Mark and Arthur for episodes 3 and 4, and then in 5, they just hit you with so much backstory.
Oh yeah, they do similarly. Like, I think it was like the second to last episode of WandaVision where you get all of that backstory, and it's just kind of holding your hand and walking you through it. And I think it's done well. I mean, if anything, I think that's where you really get the payoff of Oscar Isaac just being a very good actor, being very good at his job. And
very good, yes.
Yeah. And the rest of it's very fun, but like that was, yeah. And for the MCU to hit the emotional stuff hard, it definitely has to be done right and tastefully and still cater to what its fan base is. And I think that this show does that pretty well.
Yeah, and I think it's a little funny that the thing Arthur is after is essentially a compass in the form of a scarab. And that is like the thing he is just so adamant about getting. And we do discover why, because it leads to the tomb. And obviously that's important. But it was just kind of funny. I was like, wow, they're really obsessed with this scarab. But I think the way that the cast plays this is what made it so enjoyable for me. Like you were saying, Oscar Isaac, great, love him. Would watch him in many more episodes of this.
I'd watch him like sit in a chair for 45 minutes and be content.
Same. I'd listen to him read the phone book.
Yeah, there you go.
In the Steven accent.
Yeah.
I kind of want that now.
No.
Just do a few pages for a little promo.
I think to previous point, like the other shorter 6-episode shows that we have, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is, I don't remember how many episodes Falcon and Winter Soldier is. Is that 6 as well?
I believe they are all 6 except for WandaVision, which was 9. I'm not sure about What If, but that's animated, so...
Yeah, I kind of put it in a little...
It's in its own little box.
Separate box. Yeah. Because I love to talk about the things that I don't always love as well. I think that was maybe the weakest point of it. Because you have all of these established characters getting their own series, Loki, Hawkeye, and obviously you get so much more out of that. But they do still feel like, I don't know, like when I feel like I was referring to Hawkeye and Loki as miniseries when they came out. And that was probably just my own, my own subconscious doing that, because I'm like, oh, I'm only getting 6 episodes, and you get a lot out of the 6 episodes. But you already have so much backstory with those characters. So bringing in somebody totally new and trying to do everything in 6 episodes, I think is maybe why I feel like the ending felt, I think, a little rushed.
Yeah. I think this needed to be maybe 8 episodes instead of 6, just to give us a little more without cramming it all in. Because I don't think episode 5 necessarily feels too rushed. But I do think that because of how much is going on psychologically with this character, there's so much to unpack. Whereas, with Wanda, you have the same thing. She's going through something extremely intense, and there was this whole psychological aspect to WandaVision, and obviously those first few sitcom-like episodes were shorter because they were kind of based on sitcoms, but that show still got 9 episodes, and I think they needed to do something similar with this one to unpack the Moon Knight universe a little more because of how different it feels from the rest of the MCU right now.
I agree. And, I'm sure that there's things that are far over my head that went into it, as far as just because it was self-contained, it kind of allowed them to, that show could have been released whenever. With all of these other projects going on that were misfiring or delayed or whatever, having something where you can just be like, all right, backup plan B, and know that it'll still be successful for what it is probably a good thing. That's another reason, you don't throw the cameos in, because you never know where other characters are going to be at that time. But Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know what else I would have wanted out of it, but that's not for me to decide.
Yeah, and I think some of these shows were meant to be miniseries, like you said, and that's probably why that was in your head. But then I think people were so thrilled with some of them that they're definitely going to do more seasons, I think. Like, I think Loki is getting a second season. I could be wrong, but
I'm fairly certain of that.
I know when I logged Moon Knight, my app said it was finished, but I kind of just leave some of these Disney shows in there because they change their minds every once in a while.
If I'm not mistaken, at one point, I think it was on Twitter. I can't remember exactly if it was like Disney Plus or if it was like a Moon Knight specific Twitter account, whatever. But at first they were referring to it as a series finale, and then by the end of it, they started referring to it as a season finale.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, I don't know if it was just the success as it was airing led to them deciding, all right, we can do more with this.
Yeah, it was like the Moon Knight account tweeted one thing and then the Marvel account tweeted another thing, and people noticed that there was a difference in the words, like one said series and one said season. But yeah, so like I use this app to track all the TV I watch because it's way too much. And for Loki and What If, it says up to date. For Moon Knight, it says finished, but I'm betting that changes to up to date, which usually means there's another season coming. So we'll see.
I am fairly, I mean, it's obviously not going to be the last time we see him. And with the open-endedness, are we allowed, can we jump into the little,
please?
Yeah. So with the post-credit scene that we get, which I will allow you to explain in a second, but with that, it leaves so much more open that we need to learn, and they end the show asking more questions than getting answers to. Yeah,
and a lot of this part kind of pulls from Jeff Lemire's Moon Knight run, where it takes place in a psychiatric hospital, and we see Steven/Mark in episode 5 when everything goes down, and we see a third sarcophagus that is just shaking, and they both run by it and just kind of like don't open it for whatever reason. So my theory is that this is how this kind of ties into the post-credit scene, and that was Jake in the third sarcophagus. So Jake Lockley is the taxi driver persona of Mark Spector, and I want to say he's the one who has been doing all of the other stuff when both Steven and Mark black out, and then they wake up and it's just absolute destruction, because those are the three personalities that I know about just from the limited amount of comics that I've read. So I don't know anything about a potential fourth one necessarily. There's kind of hints at like a fourth one forming, I think, in the Jeff Lemire run or a different run. Don't quote me on that part. But so we get to the post-credit scene, and this is really what feels like the end of the show. I don't know why it was a post-credit scene. I feel like this is just how it should have ended.
Sure, because they love their post-credit scenes. You have to have them.
Yeah, you have Arthur in a psychiatric hospital, so the tables are turned, and he is quote-unquote escaping, so he thinks, and he gets in this Rolls-Royce limo that Khonshu is sitting in the back of, and then he rolls down the little window to the driver, and we see that it's Jake, and Arthur is now dead, which I'm not upset about.
No, I mean, I wouldn't have minded more Ethan Hawke in later. At the same time, you're kind of done with his character, so what?
Yeah.
What else are you going to do other than Jake Lockley him? So.
Yeah, because earlier in the episode, we obviously have the big fight between Amit and Khonshu, and they are ginormous. They get so big. I'm not 100% sure how Khonshu does that. We see how Amit does it by, sucking up all the souls, but, gods, they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, it's kind of where it's what I chalked it up to.
Yeah. What did you think of Taweret kind of taking over Layla and using her as her temporary avatar, if you will? Because they had to inject some comedy in this, which they do really well with Steven throughout. But to get it with Layla sort of at the end there, I thought that was just a nice little touch, because she had been pretty serious throughout most of this.
To give it to a character that is, for the most, I don't want to say that she's cold.
She's very mission-driven in this.
Yeah, there we go. To have her be the avatar of what ends up being a silly hippo in one. I don't know. It was the relief we needed, and then for it to come full circle with you got the earlier hint of the Scarlet Scarab play on her name with I think that whole embodiment of it was fun. I think that it could have gone either way in my stubborn opinions, but that was a hit for me. I liked it. I had fun.
Yeah, I do have some small issues with some of the effects in this.
Go for it.
Because we have that early car chase scene when he's in like the bakery truck and he keeps going between the personalities. Mm-hmm. Some of the CGI looked really bad in that scene.
Yeah.
It kind of took me out of it a little bit.
I felt the same way about Amit.
Yeah.
So.
But later, the big fight scene between Harrow, Mark/Steven, and Layla, and she has her fancy suit now, that was really well done.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing as to the lack of consistency there, I guess.
I don't know if it has something to do with there being more fight choreography in that. So then maybe some of them were a little more practical effects, like when they're all getting thrown around everywhere. Usually they do that on wires and whatnot.
Sure.
But like with the car chase scene and some of the ways the cars were crashing, I was like, this was not practical. I love good practical effects, but I mean, I get why they have to CGI a bunch of that stuff and why they choose to, and
sure,
not blow up cars on a windy mountain road, but a few of those things just really stood out to me. And I think you and I have discussed this before. I'm not someone who's going to watch one of these shows and pick out like all of the little tiny Easter eggs and details.
It's very fun for some of us, Deanna.
No, I know, but I just watch the new Rockstars videos instead because they do a better job of it than I do because they sit there and pause everything. But, they were talking about how when Steven was in the storeroom doing inventory or something, he had to do inventory for a bunch of little hippos, and it kind of, foreshadowed what would happen later. Also, the CGI on the hippo, fantastic. Loved the little ear movements. They were great. Little flutters.
Yeah. I don't know what it was about Amit that I didn't love as much, because I feel like that might have actually been a little bit more universally praised.
Yeah.
I like to have my opinion. So
yeah, I felt like the voice was a little off too. Like the voice kind of sounded a little weird with some of the effects they were doing. Like Khonshu had this big deep voice and Taweret had like this high-pitched kind of voice, and then it was just like Amit's was not memorable.
Yeah, kind of sat in the middle there, kind of tried to, I don't know, be overly pronounced as far as let me do a voice of a god type of thing.
Yeah.
It felt a little versus Khonshu, who has that kind of dry wit, and Taweret, who is, more playful and has that bubblier personality. I think that there was just something that wasn't there.
I wanted more anger out of Amit.
Yeah, there's no...
Considering what the goal was and the fact that, they had been basically locked up for so many years.
I was going to say, yeah.
Like, you should be a little angrier about this instead of just like so matter of fact.
Yes, exactly.
Is a very strange choice, but that's okay. I know we didn't dive super deep into the details, like I said here, but what were some of those things that you noticed that made you either enjoy this more or maybe a little less?
There is the QR code, I think, at the end. I want to say it's episode 6, and the QR code takes you to an episode, or it takes you to a run of Moon Knight. I want to say it's the 2019 run. But it's the one where Moon Knight faces off against Kang. And there was one other small little Kang reference earlier. And so without doing what they do and bringing other characters and making really direct references, they still, I don't know, they throw these Easter eggs in and then leave you guessing, like, oh, is this going to tie together somehow? Because immediately my brain was like, oh, cool, like maybe the shows will somehow, I don't care how, but the shows will tie together and we're still waiting for this phase's big bad. And so, we've gotten the introduction of Kang, but we don't really know what the scaling of that's going to truly be yet. So I think that's cool. They did a lot of it with Mephisto in WandaVision for us to never hear. So even if it's just to keep our brains running a little bit, I appreciate it.
I have not seen Doctor Strange yet.
I saw it last night.
I think of our little comic book friend group, everyone's waiting on me.
Yeah, I'm trying not to say anything.
To be fair, it just came out like a few days ago. I'm not that behind.
No, you're not.
But I'm hoping to see that soon. But I do like that they aren't giving us the big bad right away. Like, there are multiple possibilities at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like now, if you go back and watch the early movies and stuff, you can kind of piece it together a little more. Plus, they had Thanos in like one of the post-credit scenes or something.
Well, yeah, he was in Avengers, right?
I think so, which was what, like movie number 4 or 5? Because you had Hulk, Iron Man, Thor, and I think a Cap before then.
Yeah, we definitely had a Cap.
Yeah, a Cap or two.
A Cap. One singular Cap, I'm pretty sure. And then, because, yeah, I don't think that we had a second Iron Man yet.
I don't think so. I am bad with the timing of all of these.
It's 5 or 6. I'm confident in 5 or 6.
At least 5. That sounds about right. But with that, you know, then we kind of got the pieces of the stones, and I think now they might kind of shorten that. Like, I can't imagine waiting another 20 movies to get resolution because they've already introduced so many characters that I feel like they don't need to do all of those same introductions necessarily. Like, the Marvels will obviously have Captain Marvel again introduce, you know, Miss Marvel with the TV show. So they're using the shows as ways to kind of introduce these next wave of characters, it feels like, for some of them. With Kate Bishop, Miss Marvel, Moon Knight, we have so much going on in Doctor Strange with new characters too. You know, I've seen the trailers, so I know America Chavez is in that, and I had another character spoiled for me, but it's technically a character who's already appeared, maybe a different actor. But
we're gonna talk about this afterwards too.
Yeah.
I want to say that I'm kind of on the other hand, or I'm on the other side of that argument as far as when they'll introduce the big bad, because at this rate, whatever they put out, people are gonna see, and I feel like they know that.
Yeah,
they know that by now. So they can wait. You're like, oh, they're not going to wait another 20 movies. And I'm like, you know what? They might. We're going to see them. People are going to go and watch them. So if they wait another, you know, I won't be happy about it. But, like, sure, they've got, like, I will see them.
That's fair. I think they could do other things, though, because like we were saying, you know, this doesn't feel as tied in. So if they want to give us a Fantastic Four movie,
sure,
that, well, with Kang, you feel like it's probably going to tie in somehow because we already had that introduction, like you said. But X-Men, for instance, if they want to give us some X-Men and not have it so heavily tied to a new big bad, I think that would be okay. I don't know what Marvel's plan is. I know they have grand plans always.
I'm sure.
It feels more uncertain now than it ever has with the previous phases of what's next. And I think that's partially because of the Fox deal. You know, they got so many characters back that they probably had to reconfigure their planning.
100%. And that's probably why we're getting all these bits and pieces of other things as they build the larger foundation.
Yeah. So question for you, does it feel like too much with all of these shows and the movies? You know, we basically haven't had a big break from Marvel because we had WandaVision, we had Falcon and Winter Soldier, we had Loki, we had the Black Widow movie, we had Shang-Chi, we had Eternals, we had Spider-Man No Way Home, and now Doctor Strange and Moon Knight happening pretty much one right after the other.
I guess it depends on what you mean by is it too much? Is it too much content where I don't want to consume it? Like, no, I'm clearly consuming it.
Same.
It's not like I'm waiting. It's like when it comes out, I see it. So from that perspective, no.
Are they trying to do too much at once?
No, not necessarily. I don't think so. I'm sure that somebody can make an argument, and it's probably a stronger argument than I could make, but I don't necessarily think so. I mean, we were just talking about how we feel like they didn't do enough for this current episode. So,
well, that's because we haven't seen him before. All the other ones we've seen before, pretty much.
Sure, but like you had Loki's been around since movie 2 or 3. We can't remember when Thor came out. I think it was like 3, 4.
Thor was technically 3 because they had the Hulk movie that no one talks about, and then Iron Man.
Yeah, he's been around forever, and then that show was loved, you know, and it was great. I think that was still one of the strongest things they've done. So no, I don't think we're going to get burnt out. They clearly don't allow these characters to get burnt out. If they do, they're going to pass the torch.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that I'm going to get burnt out on Marvel content, but because I watch Marvel and Star Wars and the DC stuff and other things that aren't superhero related or Star Wars related, it's a lot of content, specifically on Disney Plus too, because they have Marvel and Star Wars.
Sure.
And, you know, I haven't even watched like the last 2 Pixar movies, I don't think, just because I don't really know why. I just haven't made it a priority. But Shane, as you know, I have a few podcasts now.
You're busy.
I got some other stuff to watch. Thankfully, I'm done with Stephen King books until September.
Yeah. No more Lost, fortunately for you.
So that'll give me some time. But hopefully I get to see Doctor Strange soon, in the next couple days by the time everyone is listening to this. But anything else on the Moon Knight front before we make a couple recommendations? I had fun.
No, I mean, yeah, anything else I'd want to talk about is just speculative. Like, where do they go from there?
Speculate, please.
Who do I want to see team up with Moon Knight in the future? Like, there's so many ways we can go. We're getting a Blade series? ?
It was supposed to be a series back in like 2006, before like any of the MCU stuff started, but for whatever reason that got stuck in production hell or whatever.
Yeah. But give me that team up. I'd love that. That would be amazing. Those 2 actors together would be incredible. If you want to give me Kit Harington, Black Knight, and Moon Knight, sure. 2 nights, that's fun.
Yeah.
There's some jokes there.
I think Blade is supposed to be a movie.
Cool. Either way, like, yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. Yeah, if there is gonna be some, I don't know, if they want to keep it its own contained thing, and they want Kang to pop in and out of, if he's gonna come back in Quantumania and then go and then, you know, leave that and jump into something with Moon Knight and leave that and jump into something elsewhere as well. Cool.
Yeah. Quick question for you. Did this show feel darker than a lot of the other things that the MCU has done so far?
You haven't seen Doctor Strange yet.
To be fair, that happened after this.
Okay, fine. Darker, kind of. I mean, they're doing a lot in this phase with acceptance. You know, you had the grief thing with WandaVision.
And that was a pretty dark show when you think about it, just
Sure.
psychologically. And I think this was the same way. And
this was more like self acceptance.
As you know, and some of the listeners, if they've listened to the episodes, I recently watched all 3 Blade movies.
Yeah.
And I feel like Blade is a character who just has to have dark movies associated with him. So I kind of want this horror version of the MCU in a sense, because we kind of see it a little with WandaVision between her and Agatha. Mm-hmm. We see it a little with Moon Knight just because you have Khonshu with this giant skull head and beak, and you have just the character of Moon Knight in general being a pretty dark dude.
I mean, people just die very quickly in this show.
Yeah. And I know I've been seeing some stuff about Doctor Strange and some killing. I haven't had anything spoiled. That's all I've seen about it, is like people are like, this should have been R and blah, blah, blah. And there's like a whole discourse around that now. But yeah, overall, I had fun with it. I'm perfectly fine watching Oscar Isaac play Moon Knight anytime.
Yeah. I don't think there's anybody that wants to complain about that. I'm happy to tell them they're wrong.
That is an incorrect opinion.
It's factually incorrect.
Fair. So I just want to recommend something I mentioned earlier, which is Jeff Lemire's Moon Knight run, because a lot of, like I said, that psychiatric hospital element is pulled from that. And it's 14 issues. The run is longer than that, but a different writer takes over with issue 15. So it's not super long, but it is a good read. What's your recommendation?
Okay, as far as recommendations go, I'm just going to keep it simple and recommend Barry because I think it's a fantastic show, and I can say that it's tangentially related in the way that there's a mercenary hitman in it, and that's going to be my recommendation. It's a great show.
Well, Shane, thank you for joining me to talk about Oscar Isaac and Moon Knight, in that order, particularly.
Yeah, this was actually a whole lot less swooning over Oscar Isaac than I expected. So
It's because Becky's not here.
I know. That's what I signed up for. It's okay. I was coming here to be the voice of reason to get you guys on topic, but clearly I couldn't keep us on topic anyway. Never can.
It's fine. Tangents are fine. Hopefully the listeners enjoy them, but that's all we have for you all today. So thank you for listening.
Thanks for having me.